Every one of us, our parents tried to bond with us, and we would typically rebel against that bonding process. But the greater the bond was, the easier it was for us to comply with the wishes of our family. Why? Because bonding also instills love in us. That's why I was in all out rebellion with my adopted family. Before I was adopted, I came into the family rebellious against authority. I don't want to listen to anybody because I hadn't received love yet. My receptors for love had been shut down in such a way that I'm not letting anybody in. Now, time somebody tries to tell me anything, I got a problem with it because I didn't have the love vested in me first. Now, if the love is vested in you, it changes everything. Why are we talking about this now? Because this affects our relationship with God Himself, because we're going to be minimally compliant to some things that He expects from us. I don't care about my bonding situation from my childhood. What I care about is how it's affecting me now. That's what I care about. All that stuff really doesn't mean anything, but I know it's affecting me now because nobody has to teach you one of the primary elements of bonding or not bonding, and that is you interpreting what's happening. Did you ever notice inside the same family, everybody's perspective of who mom and dad was, it's different between all the siblings? A statistic is typically the younger children see a different version of mom and dad than the older children did, because mom and dad had a little bit more experience, and if they were walking with Jesus, they got a little bit more loving. and by the time those younger kids came through, their relationship was absolutely different, because at the very least, even if you never heard the word bonding, you would begin to develop those characteristics with your child differently. And that makes that child more compliant to the family wishes. And so I remember I was running away from home very early in life, and so my first escapade was before I was 12. I had no plan, I had no prospects. My idea was to just ditch home and never return. Then I found myself at 2 a.m. standing in kind of a supermarket thinking, what were you thinking, son? The street, I'm 6 hours in and this street life sucks. so, and so, and so I came home, and that was just before summer started. So guess what? As punishment for running away, I had to go to work. I had to go to work at the family business, and guess what? Get paid $1 a day. That's not my complaint. I actually enjoyed the work, even though I didn't enjoy it as much because it was punishment. What I really couldn't stand was I had to buy my own school clothes with what I earned over the summer. You're trying to teach me responsibility, but you didn't teach me love yet. I don't, and guess what? Because I don't know love yet, now I'm going to put responsibility before loving relationships. Isn't that what many men do? It's all about going to get the dollar, provide for them. Got that down pat? But what happened? The whole family feels lonely because dad's not vested either. And we didn't even realize we're talking about, we're so good to label the African American family's lack of dads, but just because the white family stayed with their families didn't mean that they were there. To be clear, and the bonding cycle, the brokenness of bonding keeps going on and on and on. And so we discussed, over the last 3 weeks, we discussed how denial is it's a symptom of where there was lack of bonding. We talked about how lack of bonding does something else that is absolutely critical. We should keep repeating this over and over again, and it makes us slow to receive love. I'm a proponent of that, and I trust me on this. I would love to be telling you a different story, But the truth is I'm still slow to respond to love. You follow me? And I would tell you, I would ask you, just before I go too far, I would ask you, how are you on that? Are you selective about who you can receive love from? And if you are, why? Especially if like, for me, like, I know quite a few people in the room. I know you well enough that I should not question your love towards me. But I'm here to tell you, I know that I do. Romans 7:15 says, "For what I'm doing, I do not understand." Every time somebody throws a compliment of loving gesture my way, I'm still deflecting it. I don't understand. I don't understand why I'm doing it. I do understand now. I didn't understand for many years that it had to do with the broken relationships that you just don't recover. That was something else that was part of the family dynamic. You might tell me if you had this in your family. No matter what happens, you just shake it off. I was at the water park by our house one time, and we're people watching, and this kid, he runs headfirst into a steel pole, and he's hurt. And he comes over to Dad, and Dad is, shake it off, boy. And I'm like, no. I'm like, no, Dad, you don't pick the boy up, something. Well, we don't want to coddle boys. They'll become feminine. Well, if people don't know who they are, they become feminine too, right? Don't get me on. I'm standing on my soapbox now, because the reason that we have an epidemic of nobody nobody knowing who they are, what their gender is anymore, is because nobody really knows who they are. We're shrugging it off. Some things do hurt, and it's okay that they hurt. We were given pain for a reason, amen? So we had this emotional object constancy. Why am I bringing that up? Because we're supposed to have spiritual object constancy as well. And that the developmental years, that we could know that there's a certain fortitude, a certain strength from the relationships that we bonded with in our youth, that they carry over into our relationship with God. And now we know that God is with us, not just because he says so, but we had all the ingredients of somebody who would never leave you or forsake you instilled in us from when we were children. Now it's to be like a no-brainer with God. Now I can tell you, for whatever reason, that thing is pretty solid in me, although I still have my bouts of feeling lonely. But feeling lonely is a condition that is a symptom of bonded relationships that were broken in my past. I could talk to you about my adopted dad, but you should be able to notice I don't carry him with me. We didn't have that type of relationship. I don't carry my mom with me. I recognize she loved me, but it was way late in life that we never had a full bonding from that place. It changes everything. As I had mentioned to people when I met my biological mom, we didn't have the bonding either. And I knew that this was my, in fact, biological mother. But something inside of me said, but I don't have much. And what we're leading into right now is something that I want to introduce you to a term called reaction formation. And I notice I want you to keep those two terms together, because reaction formation is not actually the reaction that you give. It's the formation of the reaction that you give, which is underlying some things. And so that's another one of those things. Reaction formation is the explanation of why we do some of the things we do relationally when it's the opposite of what we actually need. For instance, prior to knowing Jesus, and I'm guilty of it as a Christian too, every time I have an instability with relationships, Whether I have something going on with my children or my wife, there's a disturbance in the relationship. What's man's first thing that he's going to do? I'm going to throw myself into work more, right? My reaction formation is what I actually need is to strengthen the bond, but I don't understand that I'm going to try to find some other solace, some other way of filling that void, which it's that very thing, reaction formation. It's the explanation on why drugs are used. It's the explanation on why alcohol is used. It's the explanation on why many forms of entertainment or people are using as an escape mechanism to get away from the loneliness that they're experiencing. Because I was talking with Tammy the other day, most of us don't know why they call it a movie, a motion picture, because movies are meant to move your emotions. It's a very calculated thing that's done. Why? Because a lot of times they're fulfilling something in you that you're supposed to be getting from people, but we're so non-acclimated to getting it from people that TVs are filling in the void in many cases. And I'm not saying I'm not a proponent to say to ditch the TVs. If you know what it is, you can let God minister to your heart, healing instead of using entertainment. The reaction formation is a defense mechanism when we express a feeling that's the opposite of the feeling that I'm suppressing. It's the explanation on why everybody in the room knows that men typically show one emotion, right? What's the number one emotion that men share? Anger. But is a man actually angry all the time? He is not. But because he's not, because in the family unit we were taught that you keep your emotions to yourself, that means that anger, Walt, it was the acceptable one. I don't recall ever hearing from my parents growing up, stop being angry.
Or
No, never heard that either. Or, yeah, I never heard. Did you hear? It would be awesome if you had a parent that said to you, could you tell me what you're actually feeling? I know that you got steam coming out of your ears and everything, but is that true to heart of what's actually going on in you? Thanks for sharing that, because you stirred something in me, right? Because somehow, some way, everything that we talk about is going to relate to our God-given identity. It's that big. It relates to everything in life. Remember I was talking to you earlier about taking dominion? That also means that God created us where we cannot exist one moment in time without knowing that we're somebody. That's part of the dominion aspect. And anytime I start to feel vulnerable, and it was never okay to be vulnerable, anger rises because I see nothingness attached to being vulnerable. And so I throw out this other emotion that's trying to regain stability in being somebody. But the only problem with relying on that is I can only maintain my being somebody status is while that emotion is raging. As soon as it subsides, if I don't have something else that solidifies who I am, I can't slip into nothingness. That sounds like a weird science fiction movie, don't it? Because nobody ever talks about that idea that we were created, we can never exist without being somebody. That's a declaration of being created in the image and likeness of God. We must maintain being somebody, but you could prop yourself up with who you are with 100 different things, and maybe none of them are what you were supposed to find your identity in. You can find it in anger. That's the classic anger scenario, is why people with anger problems make this other statement: this is just the way I am. And that's a reaction formation that causes that to be that way. You don't want to do that. You know that it's wrong, but you're going to react that way anyway because it's the only way that you have learned thus far to maintain being a valid person. Simple terms of reaction formation is what we read in Romans 7:15, doing the opposite of what you want to do. What I'm doing, I don't understand. What I will to do, that I do not practice, but what I hate, that I do. That's why somebody told me the other day that they appreciate the fact that I be honest about things that go on, and the fact that I can. I want to let you know that what I'm getting ready to say, God started healing me when I recognized this thing in me. And that was the simplicity of saying, I'm aggravated that I'm aggravated. I'm aggravated. That was actually a good thing to start recognizing that I'm aggravated, because what I started to realize is there's a better way. And although I still have that condition at times, I still, when I'm mindful of that, because how many years did I just be aggravated and it was just an acceptable feature of life? An example of reaction formation is people that feel lonely try to become overly independent. They also try to appear strong and highly resistant to being needy. That's a reaction formation. You're going to do the exact opposite of what you think. If you, like has been said, none of us were taught. Like, I honestly, at this stage in my life, I am here to tell you that I think that it is absolutely according to God's plan that men allow tears to come from their eyes, and I think that is, I think not only is it a necessity, but it's something that needs to be regained, because we were supposed, and I'm not looking to have a bawling party or anything like that. I'm just saying that it should be way more normal, but we still have to joke about, they saw me for well over a year or two, that the Clarks have been coming. They watched me week after week skirt around, calling, crying, all different manner of things except for what it is. We call it, there's dust in the room. I got this leaky substance. I got all manner of stuff. And finally, yes, a breakthrough came. Yes, I do cry. And if it's a valid thing to do. And I'm convinced that the shortest phrase in all of the Bible, Jesus wept. Jesus, as far as I'm concerned, was a man's man. And if Jesus wept, then any man should be able to cry and be okay with it. Here's another scenario that's a little bit more telling than anything that was said before. Is everything that we're talking about relationally, what we have to realize is you may have, I'm trying to be kind with this because I don't want people to just take this. I'm not trying to make you be in any bondage. I want everybody free. But the truth is our reaction formations have become addictive in many cases of our life. And we didn't even realize that this was an addictive thing, that we go the same route. Every time this scenario happens, it's the same route. And I'm here to tell you that there's a better way. On occasion, we will touch on a topic that ministers to people's hearts in such a way that it scares them. And when that happens, a lot of times our small groups don't go real well. You say, why? Because nobody wants to be vulnerable and have that further discussion. We would rather deflect with our reaction formation because we are still trying to not go there. And I'm here to tell you that go in there in many cases, it's well worth it. As I air my life before people, I am telling you, it is quite freeing to not, it'd be like we should be to a place where you would never be surprised about anything that somebody said to you that I've done or have been involved in, because I already told you. Because why? Because I have recognized that there's an importance in bonding. I'm perplexed by a scripture in the Old Testament, and it happened at the Tower of Babel. God comes down and says it's not good for man to conspire together because there's nothing that he can't do. And I've often wondered, are we in the same predicament as Christians today? Is Do we look at our lives as, if this bonding stuff ever took root in our lives, do we realize that we would be that same people, that there's nothing that we couldn't do? Because if God said that about the power of wickedness, how much stronger would that be under the bonds of love? It's just food for thought, because I do believe that we're God called us to be the change agents, and it's not just for the generation that we live in, that we're going to impart all these different things to all manner of people coming along, because it's what God is after.